From Bishop Ireton High School, it's Real World Wednesdays, a show featuring alumni and friends of the school for the Cardinal community and beyond. I'm Ryan Fannin, Associate Director of Advancement and a member of the BI class of 1989. And on the show today is Mike Bennett, a 1972 graduate of Bishop Ireton who paid his own way through high school, went on to an amazing career, and has now committed his life to giving back. When I first met Mike Bennett in the late 80s, I was struck by his charisma and generosity. Years later, after spending hours and hours with him over a meal or on the golf course or at an event, I'm still struck by his outgoing personality and his selflessness, especially when it comes to Bishop Ireton. Mike is a lifelong Alexandrian. He grew up on the Route 1 corridor. As he puts it, he never really left. He's the youngest of 7 kids, with the family members attending St. Louis Catholic School for elementary and middle school. But while his oldest siblings attended Groveton High School and Mount Vernon High School, Mike and his brother, closest in age, Arnold, went to the very new, at the time, Bishop Ireton. When Mike graduated in 1972, he was part of just the 5th ever graduating class. While in high school, Mike began working in the auto industry. After graduation from BI, he continued on that path to what has now become an outstanding 40-plus year career as the Chief Financial Officer and partner with Oarsman Automotive Group. Mike's impact, though, goes well beyond his impressive career in business. For starters, he's a loving father and grandfather. All 3 of his girls attended Bishop Ireton. One of his granddaughters graduated in 2018, and another is in the Bishop Ireton class of 2026. He's also a committed member of the Alexandria community, providing jobs to hundreds through his work expanding Oarsman, helping to revitalize the Route 1 corridor, serving on the board of directors for Good Shepherd Housing and Family Services, and being involved in the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce. Perhaps most striking of all, though, is his dedication to Bishop Ireton. He rekindled his love for the school in the years following graduation, attending reunions, reconnecting with the Oblates, and getting involved once his daughters became students. Throughout the years, he served the school in various capacities and has also provided monumental financial support. In fact, the court in the new auxiliary gym bears his name thanks to his generous donation, and he's also contributed tremendously in many ways to the current St. Francis de Sales Chapel renovation project. But before his revitalization of the Cardinal spirit and the giving, the story of Mike's journey to Bishop Ireton and beyond is a fascinating one that began decades ago on land once owned by his grandparents.
St. Louis Catholic Church is on the land that belonged to my grandparents. At one time, it was a dairy farm. And then eventually it became St. Louis Catholic Church and then St. Louis Catholic School. And my father was very involved with St. Louis. I was the youngest of 7 children. My oldest brother is 18 years older than me. So I was at the very end of everything, is the way I always saw it, with Larry being 18 years older than me. My father was very involved with St. Louis, and he was involved in an organization called the Holy Name Society, which I believe became the Knights of Columbus. And that would be the Knights of Columbus Council 5998, that I'm a member of and been a member of for 40, 45 years. My mother used to cook for all the priests at St. Louis, and especially the pastors, and they would come over on Sundays and have dinner with us back in those days. And then eventually the concept of a Catholic high school came around, and I know there was a group of 5 or 6 people from St. Louis Parish, and my father was one of them, that came to meetings about a Catholic high school. And so so involved from the beginning, as the way I look at it, in regard to Bishop Ireton High School. And my brother Arnold was in the 3rd graduating class at BI. 1970, and I was in the 5th graduating class at BI in 1972.
Mike, we go back a long way, so I know you've shared this story with me, but can you tell our audience a little bit about your unique experience paying for your education at Bishop Ireton? How did working from such a young age contribute to the work ethic you've maintained throughout your life?
I started newspapers at 10 years old. Then at the age of 13, I started working at Joe Gill's Amico gas station, which is where Beacon Mall is now. And then when we decided to go to Ireton, my brother Arnold started working at the Hess gas station on Telegraph Road. And then when I needed more hours because I needed more money to pay for Ireton back in those days, I took a job at the Hess gas station on Telegraph. And my brother Arnold eventually became a shift manager. And then I worked at the gas station and worked at Hess, through my years at Ireton to pay my way, to go to Bishop Ireton back then. Which created a situation which I think is very unusual for somebody who was not involved in a social aspect of Bishop Ireton on a day-to-day basis to be so involved with their high school today as I am with Bishop Ireton.
As you look back at your time at Ireton, the doors opened at Ireton in 1964. You had your older brother, after having a lot of your siblings having gone to Mount Vernon High School and Groveton High School, and now you come to Cambridge Road. What was it like here? And what do you remember the most about those early years when you were a freshman and Arnold was a junior, for starters?
Well, sometimes when you ask a question, you have to be careful of the answer. My biggest memory except for Father McNally, which I'm sure we'll get to, my biggest one was freshman English, sitting in the class, having a name Bennett, B-E, which put you in the front of everything because the V's and the Z's were in the back of the room, the way they did it back then. I was lonely, and I was like, what am I doing here? Get me out of here. Let me go to Groveton. And I mean, that's how it started. And then the people that I met were just so friendly, just so nice. St. Mary's, Blessed Sacrament, St. Michael's. I'm sure I'm missing a parish, but and of course St. Louis. But only a few of us from St. Louis went there back then because the school was so new. 5th graduating class, nobody really knew about the school, their reputation, so forth. But having to work, basically getting out of school, doing your studies, having to go to work at the gas station, took all my time. And it's after the fact where Ireton's culture caught me and got me, involved later on, and that was all due to the oblates, which I can mention the oblates all day long in regard to Father McNally and Father Green, Father Gavin, Father McKay, Father O'Neill, all the oblates that had an impression on my life.
It always reminds me too, Mike, of how so many of the oblates, they took that personal investment beyond just the classroom. Expand on that and talk about Father McNally.
Completely. I mean, it's so true. I was going to school. I was working, of course, partying on the weekends. Father McNally took me to his side early at the beginning of my junior year. And he just said, "Michael, my son," he said, you're wasting your life. I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "You're so much smarter and so much better." And I said, "Father, I'm a Route 1 kid." I said, "I was born on Route 1. I'm growing up on Route 1. And he says, "Don't kid yourself. Don't do that to yourself." He said, "You're so much better." And that led to a lot of conversations with Father McNally, just taking me to the side and probably knowing, looking at me and watching. And I mean, what a great trait. The same thing with Father Green. I mean, he was a librarian, and he wasn't somebody that you just felt like walking up to and getting close to. The guy was scary. And, it's like Father Gavin and Father McKay. But when you broke through that seal, they were there for you. They were there to talk about life and the spirituality. And of course, St. Francis de Sales.
If you can, take us now a little bit about when you graduated from Ireton in 1972. Tell us a little bit about your early journey in those years after graduation.
I knew I was going to be an accountant when I was young. People laugh, say, yeah, right. But I did some kind of test when I was in 8th grade. It came back accountant. I did one at Ireton. It came back accountant. I always knew I was going to be an accountant. And the day I turned 16, I left the gas station and went to work for Herbie's Ford on Duke Street. The very day I got my license and started in a term called tag and title with the automobile industry. And I was still with Herbie's Ford from the day I was 16 until, so that was 1970. So I was off and on with Herbie's. I tried government work. I worked with Fannie Mae, Federal National Mortgage Association, and didn't like quasi-government, so I said, okay, well, my government career is over with, and then I went back to Herbie's Ford. And so I basically worked from Herbie's from 1970 to 1982. I opened a Ford store on Route 1 in September of 1979, and then in February of 1982, Oarsman Automotive bought the store. And then 1 year to the day that they bought it, I went to work for Oarsman Automotive, and I've been there ever since, 41 years.
Tell us next about when you started really getting involved in helping Ireton and what you remember about the impact that you made when you were first able to help your alma mater that's obviously continued for decades.
When my children were at St. Louis, I was president of the PTA for a long time, head of the sports committee, head of the finance committee, part of the pastoral council at St. Louis. And so then when Michelle, Kelly, and Tracy just gravitated to Bishop Ireton, I continued that by dabbling, just very lightly, into Ireton. And then I realized how much I loved Ireton by coming back. Sometimes when you don't see something, you don't really realize how you miss it or how much you miss it. But when I came back, when Michelle came here, I got involved and got on the Board of Governors. And so then through Michelle, Kelly, and Tracy, I had a stint on the Board of Governors. And then a good friend of mine from St. Louis Parish, who happens to be the father of our head of school at Bishop Ireton today, took my place on the Board of Governors, Bob Faraday. And then the school became old. The oblates were gone. The oblate house was empty. And so then it was time for a new school. So then a group of us said, we've got to do a renovation. We have to do a renovation. We have to make sure it happens. There have been talks of renovations forever and ever and ever and ever, but it gets to a certain point and it never happens. And so, thank God, thank the bishop, the diocese, everybody involved. There was four or five of us that financially got involved, architecturally, design, and saw that Ireton, the renovation at Ireton happened. I love athletics. I played a lot of sports after college. Pickup softball, baseball, flag football, even basketball leagues in the county, and also I really like watching sports, and so got involved with the basketball program at Bishop Ireton with the different coaches that we had and athletic directors, and then as we started the renovation, someone mentioned that we needed an auxiliary gym, and so through the process, I heard that the auxiliary gym was going to be cut, and I said, no, it's not. It's not going to be cut. No matter what I have to do, we get an auxiliary gym. And so, with the work of the diocese and our committee, we got the STEM center, we got a beautiful building, we got the auxiliary gym.
So, Mike, when you think about all those years and the different committees and really the time you've spent at Ireton, what do you think your passion for this school comes from? Is it come from thinking back to the oblates and the impact? Is it your family going here, your children, you being a graduate, your brother, or is it all of that combined? Because the passion that you've had for this school has been so evident to so many for so long.
No, I think you summed it up pretty well right there. It's a culmination of all those. When my daughters came here, it was the Oblates. When I first stepped back in the door, Father McNally, Father O'Neill drew me right back into the school. If it wasn't for Father McNally, I wouldn't be who I am today. After that, it was my children. It was definitely my children. When Sawyer decided to come here, which was a pleasant surprise, and she had a great 4 years here, and was now the renovation and making the school better. Being on the Board of Governors on 2 terms was seeing just the school improve. And I mean, I have a love for the head of school. Kathleen McNutt is one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And I just love to see her do well, but I love everybody at Ireton.
I've been fortunate enough working here at Ireton full-time for 14 years to be able to see so many classes that are well-connected and stay involved and really love the school. But your class of 72, I know, brings you and your former classmates an incredible amount of pride and joy to know that not only have you guys stayed involved, but you all have gone on to do some amazing things as a class. And then it all culminated with you all coming back just about 13 months ago for your 50-year reunion. Tell us about what makes, for starters, your class of 72, such an incredibly special, tight-knit group.
That was a pretty special reunion, wasn't it? The numbers on how many we graduated, 120 some, 124. The number of class of 72 that are deceased, and I think we had a 50% or almost a 50% or even over 50% turnout at our 50th high school reunion. Absolutely tremendous and so much fun. It's all owed to Peter Newbold. Peter's been our class rep from day one. He's kept in touch. Right before our reunion, I heard from an old friend of mine. Hadn't heard from him in 50 years, and he apologized for not being able to make the reunion. He's going to try to make it, but he did not think he was going to. But I heard from him, and just the work that Peter put in has kept the class going. Great time at Bishop Ireton on Friday night. I think the class of 72 took over the Friday night reunion with all the classes there and there. I think that we still had as many people. We had probably 50% of attendance at the Friday night, so bragging a little bit. But it was a great time. And then Saturday, we had the football game, and then we went to another location for a little dinner, and then we had our 50th reunion at Landini's Brothers in Old Town, which the fish market was a big stomping ground for everybody back in those days. And Landini's is a couple of buildings up from Fish Market. And so it was really nice. Everybody got up and had 5 minutes to talk about where they've been, what they've done, where they're now. And it was just a great night. And the one thing I would say, for anybody that has graduated from BI or is going to BI, go to your reunions. Go to your reunions. Don't think that I didn't interact with anybody. Okay, I really didn't interact with people in high school, because I went to school and I worked. But what was nice was, as you go to the reunions, you change as a person. They change as a person. The reunions put us in a situation where all of a sudden you're talking to somebody, and I've lived in Alexandria area my whole life, from day one. And the people that still live in Alexandria that were here at Ireton and stayed, and at the reunions, we converse and we talk, then we go out to lunch. Okay, now we have special friendships. And so we built that up from, the 5-year reunion to the 10-year reunion to the 25-year reunion to the 50th reunion. We had a pretty special 40th reunion too. One of my very good friends now, and a former governor of Virginia, of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Bob McDonald. We had our 40th reunion at the governor's mansion in Richmond. And, through community activity and I met Bob in the sense I knew him at St. Louis, I knew him at Bishop Ireton, but we got to know each other through community activities and things that I was doing through the state legislature for the Virginia Auto Dealers Association, and Bob was doing for the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, getting into politics. Just meeting him and then the people that he knows, and then he meets the people that I know, and it's all just being involved.
You talked about how guys like Pat Harlow and Tim Vygotsky, you started in kindergarten at St. Louis with those guys, and it's these lifetime relationships that keep going on, and it's just amazing when you think about all these connections and how you guys have stayed together.
Tim, Pat, and myself have known each other since we were 6 years old, so 64 years. Tim and I reacquainted and close again after the life travel, family, children, work, career, at the Bishop Ireton Golf Tournament. So I'm putting a plug in for the BI Golf Tournament.
Going strong all the way back to 1988.
Yeah, so 35 years. But Tim and I played in a tournament one year, and so at that point I think Tim said, "Oh, Mike can play." Okay, and Tim is a very, very good golfer, and just has had a tremendous career in the state of Virginia as an amateur, and so he had played some golf with Pat. And so then the three of us hooked up, and we started taking a trip every year at a pretty well-known, public golf course called Pebble Beach. And so we started doing that, probably about 20 years ago.
It gives me a chance now to ask you a little bit about giving back, because not only have you given back to Ireton in so many ways with your time and in your support financially and in many other ways, just your emotional support of the school, but you're big in the whole Alexandria area. Describe, if you can, Mike, because it's important. I've seen it for so many years. For you live this, and the philanthropy has really grown at Bishop Ireton in a huge way in recent years. But how do you sort of define giving back, and why is it so important to you? And as you just said in your normal leadership that you always like to take on, you challenge others to do that. Why is it so important to give back from your words and your perspective?
Growing up lower middle class, that's what we were. I had nothing. I grew up on Route 1. I think I'm on this earth, and it's a spiritual part, to give back for all the blessings that I've been given. And I've been given tons of blessings. I've been involved in pretty much every organization on the Route 1 corridor and trying to find the one that works the best and so forth. And throughout the whole process, and as you know, especially with the golf committee, also 35 years, it's giving back to an entity. I'm not going to say school. It's to an entity or a belief. Advance always. At some point in time, how do you advance? Is it a trip to Jamaica? Is it a trip around the world? Or is it giving back to your community that's giving you everything? To me, it's giving back to my community. I don't mind a trip around the world. That'd be fun. I like to go to Jamaica, but it's giving back to the community. The passion on giving, I think it just comes from knowing what it's like to not have something and to need something, and trying to do the right thing and looking at the correct avenues to put your resources that you have available in life to that.
That's Mike Bennett, a titan of the Alexandria community and a beloved member of the Cardinal family who remains deeply involved with Bishop Ireton more than 50 years after his graduation. I'm Ryan Fannin, and you've been listening to Bishop Ireton's Real World Wednesdays.